Welcome back to the channel. We're back with another Spider-Man Commander deck profile. To Chameleon, Master Disguise. For 3 and a blue, you get a 2/3 where you may have Chameleon enter as a copy of a creature you control, except its name is Chameleon, Master Disguise. You can also cast it for its Mayhem cost of 2 and a blue, where you may cast this card from your graveyard if you discard it this turn, which, while it's in the command zone, we're not going to really do that too often. We could have some ways where maybe someone bounces it and then we could do that, but not going to happen too often. So we have plenty of ways to copy our creatures in order to make sure we're getting multiple copies of the same creatures, because there's just some good ones that you want multiple copies of. Some stuff that will make us get copies of our opponent's stuff. Ways that even there's some legendary creatures in here, since Chameleon changes his name, we don't necessarily care about that too much with the legend rule. But that's just a general overview of the deck. Let's get into it card by card. Starting us off, we have Arcane Signet for a little bit of mana. Bender's Waterskin. This one's not going to be out by the time the Spider-Man tech comes out, but still, I feel like this is one that's going to be in every deck pretty soon. Conjurer's Closet. Sometimes there's a better creature that we want to start to copy, so rather than have it just sit on the battlefield as a copy of a mana dork, we could have it blink and become a copy of something new. Helmet Host, another way to get copies of our stuff at the beginning of combat in your turn. Create a token that's a copy of the equipped creature, get another Chameleon. It's not, no, it's legendary, so, oh no, it isn't legendary. So you do get multiple copies of the same thing, keep getting more copies. Maybe if one of your opponents has, there's some Aurelia card that could give you infinite combos with that, if you make copies of that. Lightning Grease, in order to give our creatures haste, we want to make sure that while we're getting copies of our opponent's stuff, a lot of them probably have some tap abilities, a lot of them probably want to attack, so getting that haste on them helps us out a bit. Mirage Mirror. Mirage Mirror becomes a copy of target artifact, creature, enchantment, or land until end of turn. Potentially a little bit of ramp if you need to, but paid 2 mana to get 1 mana by having it become a copy of a land, but really you're going to have it become a copy of like one of your creatures, or maybe one of your opponent's creatures, because it doesn't have to be something you control. Mirror Box, legend rule doesn't apply to permanents you control. We want to make sure that we can have as many copies of our best legendary creatures, our best creatures in general, which tend to just be legendary. So having multiple copies of them will help us out quite a bit. Then each non-token creature you control gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control that has the same name as that creature. With how many copies we're getting the same name, that's not going to be hard to do. Sapphire Medallion for a little bit of cost reduction. Sculpting Steel, another way to get some copies of some things. Maybe you want a second Soul Ring, a second Sapphire Medallion, second Mirror Box. That can give you a lot of stat boosts. Soul Ring for the mission, not for the mission, for the mana, and Wayfarer's Bauble for the mana while we're there as well. For our creatures, we have Ablet Spawn. This one doesn't necessarily become a copy of our opponent's stuff. We do get to copy their abilities. Also getting a second copy of this with Chameleon will help us get those abilities again and again, especially if they have their Panharmonicon on the battlefield. We basically have our Panharmonicon with this. Agent of Treachery. Whenever Agent of Treachery enters the battlefield, gain control of target permanent. Since our stuff is entering as copies, we do also get our own enter the battlefield abilities, so we like to see those. And at the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more permanents you don't own, draw 3 cards. A little bit of draw power is helpful there as well, because it's not that uncommon that we can get multiple copies of this, or there's multiple things we don't own. Astral Dragon. When Astral Dragon enters, create 2 tokens that are copies of target non-creature permanents, except they're 3/3 dragons. In addition to their other types, they also have flying. 2 additional Soul Rings. Cast Chameleon, get 4 or more Soul Rings. You're at 5 Soul Rings now. Think about how much mana you'll have. Enough to cast as many Mirror Boxes as you want, because that's probably something you want more copy than just a dragon. Auton Soldier. Enters battlefield as a copy of any creature, enters as the copy, so we do get those enter abilities, and also just second copies of our best stuff. Body Double, enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature in a graveyard. Doesn't necessarily have to be ours, could be one of our opponents, so maybe we just steal their best thing, since, we don't always have stuff we want to copy. Clever Impersonator, enters the battlefield as a copy of any non-land permanent on the battlefield, not just your own. Could be your opponent's Soul Ring. You didn't get your Soul Ring, now you do. Clone, enters the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield. Once again, we're seeing this ability a lot. There's a lot of stuff in our deck we want to have copies of, and just having more copies means more ways to win the game. Consecrated Sphinx. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards. It's a May ability, and also you get multiple copies of this. You're now drawing 4 cards, 6 cards, 8 cards, 10 cards. Or if you get enough copies of this, whenever your opponent draws a card, and that's 30 cards anytime you go around the table. Cryptoplasm. Being upkeep, Cryptoplasm become a copy of another target creature. Doesn't enter as a copy, so you don't get enter abilities. But just by having it be a copy of like your opponent's best stuff, it could come in handy. Defiler of Dreams, another creature we want multiple copies of, allowing us at cost reduction, allowing all of our blue mana to be blue Phyrexian mana, and draw power on top of that as well, because we do have plenty of permanents we're going to be casting with this deck. Displacer Kitten, another way to blink our creatures so that we can have those enters abilities, have them come back as copies of something else. Also, there's something else we want to copy. Fairy Mastermind, Flash Flying, whenever an opponent draws their second card each turn, you draw a card. You also pay 4 for each player to draw a card. Just another good ability to copy there with our copy creatures in order to make sure that we're getting multiple draw powers off that. Hullbreaker Horror, another really fun spell to copy, because now rather than just bouncing one spell or returning a non-land permanent to its owner's hand, we're doing multiple things anytime we have copies of this on the battlefield. Also can't be countered. We like to see it. Jin Gitaxi's Core Augur, probably the number 1 spell we want to copy with this deck. Only once, because once you're getting past the second one, it loses its usefulness. But being your end step, draw 7 cards. Each opponent's maximum hand size is reduced by 7. You basically make sure your opponent has no maximum hand size at all. Maybe 1 isn't that much different from 0, but could be. Kega, the Tides, and also draw a strong 14 every turn. I think you're going to get some benefit. You're going to get what you need. Kega, the Tide Star, dies, gain control of target creature. That's gain control. Also, when it leaves the battlefield, want to make copies of it with some things that don't respect the do respect the legend rule. This could come in handy there as well. Mind Flayer enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature for as long as you control Mind Flayer. Another one we get multiple copies of, getting multiple creatures, allowing us to draw Jury from that card we saw early in this pile. Muldrifter, another creature we want to make copies of, this way we get to draw cards. Naga Fleshcrafter, another way to make everything into a copy of something. Maybe you have, it doesn't really matter if you have multiple copies of Mind Flayer, because it's an enters ability, but maybe you have multiple Hullbreaker Horrors. Everything's a Hullbreaker Horror. And that could be just bouncing your opponent's entire field anytime you play a spell. Phantasmal Image enters as a copy of any creature on the battlefield. Once again, this one, we like just to see that ability. Phyrexian Metamorph, another copy spell. Copy of artifact or creature on the battlefield. Once again, doesn't have to be under our control. Could be our opponent's stuff, and now we're playing their deck. Just like we are with Pirated Copy. And whenever a creature of the same name deals common damage to a player, you get to draw a card. So a little bit of draw power there for us as well off this one. Sakashima of 1,000 Faces, probably the commander this commander is most similar to, just without the partner giving you, and also this one makes the legendary rule not apply, just on its surface. So we'll have to see those abilities. Same with Sakashima Impersonator, so Imposter. Becomes a copy of something. Pay 4, return to its owner's hand. But overall, just a second copy of all of our opponent's stuff. Or is this one just our stuff? Choose a creature in play. Yep, adding players. Sakashima Student enters battlefield. Copy of any creature on the battlefield. We could ninjutsu this in, making it so that we could bounce one of our other creatures that already served its purpose and have it enter as a copy of something else. Sand Hall Creeper, another thing we can copy. Becomes a copy of our other stuff as well, but still, just having something enter as a copy of this allows us that little bit of draw power to extra +1/+1 counters, and then later become what we need to be. Solemn Simulacrum, another creature we don't necessarily mind our stuff turning into, because when they enter as him, we get those additional lands, and we're in blue, so we'll take what we get sometimes. But also, when those creatures die, again, that draw power is nice as well. Spark Double for more copies. Let's show +1/+1 counter on it. Also some loyalty counters if you count copy of Planeswalker. Seeing Double, another copy spell. That's a Deep Dwelling. Another blink our creatures for those enter battlefield abilities, or just enters abilities now. Also something we don't mind becoming a copy of. Undercover Operative. Enters the battlefield, a copy of creature on the battlefield, except with a shield counter on it, making it a little bit more difficult to get rid of. Or if we just swing it out, if our opponent decides to swing on us with one of their creatures, we now have something to block it with. As long as they didn't put a bunch of +1/+1 counters or equipment or a whole bunch of other stuff on it. And Vizier Many Faces for another copy spell. On to the second half of the deck. We have Copy Enchantment, which you may know copies an enchantment. And not just yours, it could be one of your opponents. Maybe your opponent has an extravagant replication I want to make a copy of. Where at the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of another target non-land permanent you control. Create another copy enchantment, which gets you another extravagant replication, which could combo off pretty well. Mirror Hall Mimic. Enters the battlefield, copy of any creature on the battlefield. You also pay its disturb cost while it's in your graveyard. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted creature, except as a spear in addition to its other types. So, another way to get our copies. Mirror Made for more copies, artifacts or enchantments, so maybe a dirt extravagant replication. Now we're getting a lot of copies every turn. Moonlit Meditation. We're not creating too many tokens, but like when you do, you may as well have them be copies of something. And then for our instance, we have Aetherize for board wipe on our opponent's swing on us with all their stuff. Offer You Can't Refuse for a counter spell. Arcane Denial for a counter spell. Cackling Counterpart for a copy spell, because we got to see those. Counter spell for a counter spell. Elemental Simulacrum. For each opponent, create a token that's a copy of target creature that player controls. This does create tokens. So, could just be like copies of your besting if you have Moonlit Meditation on it. High Tide for some extra mana. Mana Drain for board wipe. Not board wipe. What am I thinking? Counterspell plus all that mana. Narset's Reversal for a copy of a spell. Well, this is a non-permanent spell. Pongify for some removal. Rapid Hybridization for some removal. See double to double our creatures. Theoretical Duplication. Whenever non-token creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control this turn, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Maybe your opponent's storming off. They're getting all their creatures. They just spent 20 mana. Well, we may as well get a copy. Twin Cast for another copy of our instants and sorceries or opponents. We don't need to play our own deck. It doesn't matter how good our deck is when our opponent has a good deck. And then for our sorceries, a Bribery for some tutor. Clone Legion, another we get all of our opponent's stuff onto our battlefield. Doesn't steal it, they just get more of it. Realm Sketching for another copy spell. Right of Replication for another copy spell, except 5 copies this time around. Stolen Identity, another copy spell. We have War Room for some draw power. Vesuva for copy land. Thespian Stage for another copy land. Michelson Gardens. Seagate Restoration for some draw power. Reliquary Tower for no maximum hand size. Mirrored Landscape Island. Halimar Depths, which, what's this one do? You basically get to brainstorm. And Castle Vantress for some scrying. But that's the deck there. If you guys liked the video, make sure you like the video. If you want to see more like this, make sure you like, comment, subscribe so you can stay tuned for future videos. Thanks so much for watching.